He wants to listen to the story to talk the truth. Thanks, man.
Testing, testing. Working? Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I began in and with the name of Allah, beseeching Allah's assistance, blessings, and protection. Alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks are for Allah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. And we ask Allah to bless His and our Messenger Muhammad, to honor him, to compliment him, to elevate his mention in rank, to protect him from any harm and evil, and to shower him with grace and peace. Last session, today we're going to flip the script a little bit. So last session we ended with a few questions, and I said we're going to start off with these questions next time. So instead of jumping into the snapshot that we're going to be covering today, we want to start off with some of those questions. So last week we talked about how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam received the first revelation. He received his prophethood when he was how old? 40 years old. Very good. And we talked about how he passed away when he was 63, 62, and 63. So here he lived 63 years. He got his prophethood all the way when he was 40. In other words, Allah waited 40 years of his life, which is almost 2/3 of his life, and then gave him the prophethood. So the question is, why? Couldn't Allah have given the prophethood when he was 30 or 20? If he had done so, then we would have had the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a prophet and messenger for a longer period of time instead of only 23 years. So what are some of the insights that we can come up with of the wisdom behind waiting until the Prophet of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 40 to give him the prophethood? Why not give it to him earlier?
40, the person complete his manhood.
Okay. And so, yeah, so that's when they officially enter into manhood after being a youth. Good. And that's when maturity really, really fully kicks in. Great. What else?
At that age, you are more respectable to the society.
Aha, right there. Explain that a little more. Explain that a little bit more.
If you're like a 20-year or 30-year old, the society will not really kind of respect you. But if you're old, matured, you kind of have more respect.
When you're older and more matured, you have a little bit more respect from society as compared to when you're younger. And especially when you're coming with a new message. Especially a message that's going to just flip the script and really switch things up. You need to have confidence, and the people, you have to be believable to the people. So 40 years of this man being amongst them, proving that he was a sadiq al-amin, the honest, the trustworthy. Right? It took 40 years to really, really bring it home. And then the prophethood comes. And that's why when he came with the prophet, with the message of the Quran, with Islam, a number of people were like, we're on it. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Why were they on it so quick? Because you're like, this guy can't lie. And if he doesn't even lie about something so small and minuscule, maybe something like business or things like this, certainly he wouldn't lie about the creator of the heavens and the earth, of something so great. Right? So they knew he was trustworthy, they knew he was honest, they knew he was of impeccable character. And so that's one of the reasons. Good. Another question we asked last week was, why did Allah will that the man that would get this final message of the Quran to be unlettered? We talked about how he wasn't a poet, He didn't know how to read or write. So why did Allah will that to be? Allah could have willed for him to be very, very learned in his sciences from a younger age. But yet, he waited to not have him. Yes.
God know that it came from, this incredible knowledge came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Alhamdulillah, 100%. So that they would know that if he was, let's say, some very, very learned guy, and he was a poet, because that's what they really, the poet in that society, they really, really, that was their thing, is poetry. And to be able to just shoot out poems left and right, and to be impromptu on the spot, ad-lib, just drop poems left and right, freestyle as we would call it, and to really, really be in the lyric sciences. That's what they were, that was that society's top thing. Our society, we might look up to, maybe science and technology. At that time, that was their thing. So if a man who's an expert in those things suddenly comes with Quran and this amazing discourse, maybe some of them would have fallen into that mistake and say, well, yeah, he just upped his game a little bit more. But he's the one that's fabricating it. He's the one that's writing this Quran. He's the one that's coming with this. But the fact that he was unlettered, he wasn't a poet, he was never known for that, and now he's coming with this amazing discourse of the Quran, with amazing information, amazing knowledge. For sure, it's not coming from him, because we know him for 40 years and he wasn't like that. So he can't just suddenly out of nowhere 4 years and then just one night flip the script and now suddenly he knows all this stuff and he's making up all this stuff on his own. So that's very good. One other question we ended with. We said that the first few ayat that were revealed were the first few ayat of Surah Al-Alaq. And one of those ayat was اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق. Created, Allah is the one that created insan, human beings, from the alaq, from a little spot of a clot of blood. So my question was, why, you have two things here, Allah introducing himself, and Allah talking about human beings. When we're referring to himself, what's the action that he uses in this ayah? Created. Allah created. Okay? Keep that in mind. Allah uses the action of him creating. And how does he describe human beings in this ayah? A clot of blood. Right? Created is the verb, the action that he's using to describe himself, and us human beings, he's referring to as a clot of blood. What is the significance of that? Because Allah could have used any other action of his to describe himself and introduce himself. And likewise for human beings, he could have described us in many different ways as he has throughout the Quran. But why here, in these first few ayat to come down from the heavens to us, does Allah choose this relationship here? This one, you really got to get him moving. Yes, sir, Robert.
To show the magnificence.
To talk about the magnificence of Allah. I mean, here's Allah who created us. How can we even get so arrogant to ever think otherwise, to ever worship otherwise, to worship ourselves, to think that we know better than Allah? How can we even go down that line? Allah created us, and after that, don't you even think you're a big shot right now? The way you work, the things that you can do, the things that you can write and you can invent, don't think you're that big. Because where did you come from? A clot of blood. There's a nice saying of Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, I can't remember the exact wording, but it comes something like this. كيف يتكبر أحد وقد خرج من مخرج البول مرتين. How can a human being ever get proud or arrogant about anything when he came out of the orifice of urine twice? I mean, think about it, right? Biologically speaking, when we came into this world, how did we come in? We came out of the orifice of urine, the path of urine that leaves a human being twice. Not even once, twice. And we want to think we're big shots? We want to think we're great? Allah is great. Allah is the greatest. Allah is greater than anything that we can, put together. So here, Allah is introducing himself in this ayah like this. My man, very good. And a little bit more as well. What's that?
He was teaching something that was not known.
Okay.
Because at that point, it was not known that we came from a clot of blood.
Uh-huh.
You see what I'm saying? So he was kind of doing exactly what he said he was doing. He was teaching what was unknown, because that was formulated a little later on, exactly the very start of us.
Very good. Again, and that can only come from the one that created us in the first place. Excellent. What else? Give me more. What is the message here for the Prophet specifically? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What's the message in this relationship here for the Prophet himself? Specifically relating to right now, I'm about to throw this huge, heavy burden on you, the burden of prophethood, the burden of being a messenger to all of humanity. But learn this lesson here, this ayah right here. Yeah.
Great things can start off small.
Great things can start off small. Okay, very, very good. What else? Prepare yourself for what? You're onto something there. What's he going to face? Is it going to be easy these next 23 years? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's going to take work. It's going to take sweat. It's going to take tears. It's going to take blood. His followers are going to be killed and assassinated. There's going to be assassination attempts on him. At some point, and we'll cover this maybe after Ramadan if we continue, the entire Arabian Peninsula gathers up hundreds of thousands of people surrounding him in Medina and his followers about to attack. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. You're going to go through really, really hard times. Your family members are going to be, there's going to be assassination attempts on them. Some of them are going to be murdered. There's going to be, the people are going to talk about your wives, your daughters. It's going to be hard. But as it gets hard, what shouldn't you forget? At the end of the day, all of this is coming from whom? Human beings that are weak. And we've got your back. The Creator, Allah, the Creator of all these people. If the entire world were to come together and try to harm you, Allah doesn't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. And this is such an important point to keep in mind when we want to do the work of Islam. So important. That results don't come from our efforts. Results come from Allah. Allah is the one that gives success. So this is a very, very powerful point in these first few ayat that Allah is sending to the Prophet also, as well as us. And the last question that I had asked was when Allah SWT says in these ayat, وَرَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمُ, and your Lord is Al-Akram, the most noble, the most generous. Allah, again, could have used any other name or attribute at this point to describe himself. And this is just a normal activity that we should do when we recite the Quran. When we go through the Quran, because guess what? Not a single word is in the Quran except that Allah wanted it to be there. And Allah is very precise. He's not haphazard. There's nothing accidental in the Quran. Every single word is there for a reason. Every single word. Sometimes the word you'll find in the Quran, in one part, the word order is like this, and sometimes in another part, it's switched. You just think, okay, it's a sentence structure. There's a purpose for that. And so every single time Allah uses His name, this is one of the secrets of the Quran. Anytime Allah uses one of His names or attributes, look into it and be like, wait, hold on. Why does Allah use this attribute here or this name here and not another one? And if you go to that ayat and you really reflect over it, look at the ayat before, look at the ones after, you'll come up with the secret of the Quran. It's all there for a purpose. Allah doesn't do anything haphazardly. Right? So over here, in these first few ayat, why does Allah use the most generous, the most honorable to introduce Himself to the Prophet of God? Why couldn't it be something else? Al-Khaliq, right? We just talked about the importance of introducing Himself as the Creator. Why couldn't He just use, Al-Khaliq, وَرَبُّكَ الْخَالِقِ, or وَرَبُّكَ الْعَزِيزِ, or any other, what's, some insight that we can think of on Akram, the most generous.
Put him in a state of hamd, shukr,
Okay.
gratefulness. Because if he's saying that he's the most generous, then the Prophet ﷺ immediately would be grateful of that.
Excellent. To put the Prophet ﷺ in a state of more gratitude, and specifically for gratitude for what? Think about his life. Think about the first 40 years. What are the things that the Prophet of God at that point would be grateful for to Al-Akram, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
So many things.
So many things. Fear not to me. Fear not to me.
For giving him providing them with guidance, even though he was an orphan.
Providing him with guidance. Right now, even this messengerhood, the prophethood that he's getting right now. And then the guidance. He was raised amongst idol worshippers and pagans. He could have easily turned out as one of them. But Allah protected him. Even when he was younger, Allah protected him from that. What else? You mentioned something then after. He was born an orphan. His father died before he was even born. His mother died early in his life. His grandfather was supposed to take care of him. His grandfather died early in his life, in childhood. In spite of all of this, the difficulties of all this, being raised in a society that was looking down on orphans. He didn't love orphans. He didn't take care of them. This is why in the Quran, the concept of looking out for orphans and the underprivileged is so important. So, in spite of that, Allah was the most generous and protected him from harm, protected him from evil, and kept him safe, and then eventually gives him the guidance of Islam and prophethood. And just like he was the most generous, right now, likewise, moving forward in your life, just like he did all this, he's going to continue to do it. So don't trip, don't fret. It's going to get hard, but don't forget, your Lord is the most generous. And so he'll continue doing that. Okay, so one point that I wanted to mention last week, and it just, I didn't get to it, was, again, talking about Khadija radiallahu anha, and the monumental role that she played, the powerful role that she played, and the lesson in it for us. Now, she played such a powerful role at that point. If we look at it again, the prophet of God getting revelation, coming back, bewildered, scared, terrified, questioning, doubting. This is the state. We talked about this all last class, right? And she put that, if you look at the seerah, that's a very important, crucial time in the story, because it could have gone a number of ways. But she played such an important role to give him that support, to give him that confidence, to give him that strength, to then continue for the rest of the 23 years with confidence and just blazing forward. So she played a very important role. Yet, she wasn't looking for limelight. She wasn't looking for status. She wasn't even looking for recognition. She wasn't standing up and saying, praise me, or anything like this. She was just behind the scenes. But when the time came, she stepped up to the plate and played such a powerful role. And this is important for us, because a time will come in our lives to do something for the deen, to do something for Islam. But you know what? You might not be in front of a mic. Imam says it so beautifully whenever he makes an announcement for the food pantry that you guys do, I believe on a weekly basis, right? Imam, subhanAllah, may Allah SWT bless you guys. He said, we're not doing this in front of any photo op. We're not doing this for cameras. Rain or sunshine, we're out there. Coronavirus or otherwise, we're out there. That's what it's about. No matter what, you got to do it because you're doing it for the sake of Allah. You're not doing it for any other reason. And that's when it's the weightiest. Those actions that nobody knows about, that are done behind the scenes, those are the ones that are the most weightiest on the Day of Judgment. Keep in mind, on the Day of Judgment, our good deeds are not counted. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about our good deeds on the Day of Judgment being measured, it's not talking about counting, as in who has more good deeds, who has less good deeds. Rather, it's talked about weighing. So it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And where's quality? When you do it sincerely for the sake of Allah, in the right way. When those actions that are done sincerely for the sake of Allah, no other reason, and then done in the right way, in the way of the Sunnah, those are powerful. Who knows, just one sincere sajda in the darkness of the night with nobody around. Who knows, that's the thing that's going to tip your scales. You never know. You never know. So she plays this powerful role, right? Nowadays, it just on this point, it's so interesting how our society just gets things flipped. For children, and in schools, and we probably all went through this as well, the types of conferences and the types of workshops that they send us to are leadership conference, leadership workshop, and all this. We want people to learn how to be followers, right? We need leaders, we need followers, we need soldiers. First, we learn how to do that, and then, if Allah so wills, you get moved up, right? So, and so she plays such a big role that I wanted to just mention one of the things that happens later on in the seerah, to talk about how pleased Allah was with her, and how Allah accepted her for her service to Islam and to the Prophet behind the scenes. Nobody knew about it. So it's an amazing hadith. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is later on in the seerah, was just was with Jibreel alayhi salam. I mean, imagine that, just kicking with the angel like that. Like she was just chilling with the Jibreel alayhi salam, and they were by themselves. And Jibreel alayhi salam looks to the Prophet and he says, Ya Rasulullah, هذه خديجة قد أتت معها إناء فيه إدام أو طعام أو شراب فإذا هي أتتك فاقرأ عليها السلام من ربها ومني وبشرها ببيت في الجنة من قصر لا صخب فيه ولا نصب. Here comes Khadija. So he's giving, it's just them two. Okay, Jibreel alayhi salam and the Prophet in the house, right? And Jibreel alayhi salam tells the Prophet of Allah, hey, your wife Khadija is about to come. And just to prove it a little bit more, to give another detail, just to kind of, and she's got some food with her as well, right? The Prophet can't see any of this, but he says Jibreel alayhi salam is just telling him, right, that this is about to happen. And then he tells him, when she does come, say assalamu alayki to her. Now we talked about what that means. It's not just may peace be upon you. We talked about all of what assalamu alayki actually means and how beautiful of a dua it is when we greet each other with assalamu alaykum. It's not just may peace be upon you, it's so much more. So he says, فَقْرَأْ عَلَيْهَا السَّلَامُ مِنْ رَبِّهَا وَمِنِّي. That convey to her as-salam from your Lord and from me. You just got to chill because I got goosebumps too on that. I mean, really think about that. It's one thing like if I were to meet you guys, Imam Abdul Hafiz sends salam to you. Like it's like, oh man, Imam sends salam to me? Like you feel good, right? If someone reported and sent a salam to me, imagine being conveyed salam from Allah to you. Just let that sink in. And then Jibreel alayhi salam says, and convey it from me as well. And then it doesn't stop there. And give her the glad tidings of a palace in Jannah. Allahu Akbar. Right? Made of pearls and fine jewels. And in it, there will be no toiling and effort. You don't have to worry about that because you get it. You imagine someone's pick, okay, that means a lot of work, right? Maintain it. No, there's no maintenance. There's no maintenance. This is what we're talking about. Okay, so the title of tonight, I gave you guys a sneak preview last week. The title of tonight was what? The cream of the cream of the crop. In Arabic, we would say safwa. Safwa means the most distinguished, the most outstanding, the best. That's what safwa means. Literally, safwa comes from when you have milk. Back in the day, you get milk before it was, nowadays we kill it, right? Pasteurization and all this. But putting that aside, if you get fresh raw milk, the cream that comes from it, that's called the safwa. That's the best part, right? The cream that comes from the milk, that's the most nutritious part, and it's the best tasting as well. So that is called the safwa. In other words, what's selected, the outstanding, the part that's the best. So when we talk about humans, we talk about safwatul khalq, the safwa of all of creation, the cream of the crop, the best and most outstanding of creation. So when we talk about this group that are the best of all creation, the cream of the crop, who are we referring to? The prophets and messengers. They're the best. They're the best. The messengers of God, they're the best. And again, keep in mind the 3 ayat that we talked about in the introduction, that it's going to come up over and over when you're studying seerah, to keep it in mind. Number 1, Allah yastafi min al-malaikati rusulan wa min al-nas, that Allah is the one that selects messengers from the angels and human beings. That was ayah number 1. Ayah number 2, Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalata. Allah knows best where He places His message, His messengerhood. He's the one that's selecting the prophets and messengers. Allah, it's all from Allah. And number 3, the ayah was رَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ. Your Lord, your Master, is the one that creates, and He's the one that selects. So this is from Allah. Okay? That's why there's the safwa. So I want to just throw a little bit more out here. Okay, we have the messengers. They're the cream of the crop of all of creation. What's the most important reason that we just covered? Why do we say, why are they the best of all creation? Why are they the cream of the crop? Because they're selected by Allah. Because Allah willed it like that. Allah is like, you're going to be the best. Okay, that's the first reason. What's the second reason? Because they were given this guidance, before they were given this inspiration and the revelation from God, and they would speak directly with Allah. Because of this, can you imagine what state their iman, their faith was at? I mean, even just, we go through our ups and downs, right? We got our hilltops and our valleys, right? And our word is on it. Our iman, our yaqeen, our certainty, our faith is this bold. And then sometimes it might go down and up. And that's how Allah created us. We're human beings. Messengers, imagine this. Seeing angels, talking with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, getting revelation and guidance. Their iman, their certainty, their conviction on their faith was so high. The best that human can ever aspire to be. So that also makes them the cream of the crop. So we said the first reason, Allah selected them. Number two, because of the selection, their iman is always high. Number three, the third reason, and the final one, is because of their actions. Because of their deeds. That's also why we would call them the safwatul khalq, the cream of the crop. So what was the first one again? Allah selected them. Number two, because of their iman and their yaqeen, their faith and their conviction and certainty on that. Good. And number three, their deeds. Very good. Now we're gonna go through deeds and we're gonna break it down into three more. When it comes to deeds, we're gonna break it into three types. Number one, subcategory, their ibadah, their actual worship. Can you imagine how amazing and beautiful their worship to Allah actually was? SubhanAllah. So that's the first part of the deeds. The second part of their deeds was what? It's something that they stayed away from. What did they stay away from that made them special?
Shaitan.
Good. They stayed away from shaitan and they stayed away from sins. They were protected from engaging in major sins of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is an important part of being safwa, that they were staying away from major sins. And we believe this as Muslims, that the prophets and messengers of God did not engage in sin. Contrary to what other people who claim to believe in these prophets and messengers, they got some really messed up beliefs about the prophets and messengers, saying that they were drunkards and they committed incest and they were committing zina, and even they say Sulaiman alayhi salam, Solomon committed kufr, crazy things. So it's like, okay, these are supposed to be the best of all people and they're supposed to be role models for all mankind, and yet they're doing all this? Doesn't make sense. This is the type of perversions that entered into their belief system. That they believe that certain prophets and messengers committed all these major sins. We as Muslims, we don't believe that. We believe that they were sent as role models, and as a result of that, Allah protected them from all this. What kind of role models would they be if they were, getting drunk and committing incest and doing all these type of things? That's not a role model that we want to follow as Muslims. So this is, we said, the actions. The first one is that their ibadah, the things that they would, the actual devotional worship that they would do. It was amazing. Number two, that they were protected from sins. They wouldn't engage in major sins. And number three, when it comes to their deeds, it was their character, their etiquette, their manners, their personalities. That was amazing. And that's the topic of today, right? What Khadija is going to continue talking about, radiallahu anha. So that's the third thing that distinguished these people as being the most outstanding, the cream of the crop. Let me just do a quick review and then we're going to jump into it. So we said they're the cream of the crop because of three reasons. What was the first one? Because Allah selected them. The second reason, their iman was just on a high level of yaqeen with certainty and conviction. Number three was their deeds. Now, with deeds, we also said let's break them down into three subcategories. The first subcategory, their ibadah, their worship. The second one, I think I just heard someone say, no major sins. And then the third one, their etiquettes, their manners, their akhlaq, their character, their personality, right? So, and this is what Khadija talks about. Last week we talked about how she says, "Kalla wallahi la yukhzika Allahu abadan." I swear by Allah, no way will God ever forsake you. He'll never humiliate you. And then she continues. That's a bold statement to make. Really bold statement to make. Like, no way, I swear by God, no way will God ever forsake you. He'll never humiliate you. Like, whoa, that's a big statement. But she continues now. She continues with the reason of how she can make such a bold statement. The reason why she comes to such a conclusion. Right? So our mother, Khadija, radiallahu anha. By the way, why do we call her our mother? Why do we call her our mother?
In the Quran it says,
All the prophets' wives are mothers.
Very good. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَأَزْوَاجُهُ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ. And his wives are the mothers of the believers. And so this is a part of our faith, not our biological mothers, but our mothers in faith. And that's how we should respect them. That's how we should talk about them. That's how we should love them. So we don't speak about them in inappropriate ways, disrespectful ways. Just like we shouldn't do it with our own mother, likewise our mothers in faith as well. So the Prophet of Allah, just a quick recap last week, he comes and he tells her, and he opens up to her with his vulnerability and insecurities, and she makes this powerful statement. And then she describes him in a few ways. And that's what we're going to get into now, is certain traits about him, about his character and personality specifically, about his manners, about his actions, right? We're going to get about those. And then she says, this is why I can make such a statement. Because she knew him in and out, right? She knew what he was about. They say, like, you really see a true person's colors, right? When you really get to know them. How did she know that, right? How did she know that about him? He makes a statement where she knew she had intimate knowledge about him. And that's why if we pause in this point in Sirah, and we go back maybe about 15, 20 years, before they were even married, what took place? How did they get married? Who can remind me of the incident of how they actually considered marriage? Right? So he was known as just being a shepherd who was a sadiq and amin, the truthful and the honest and the trustworthy. And she needed someone to represent him in business. As we learned in Surah Quraysh, رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ, that the Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula, nothing grows here. It is a dead, heat desert. Nothing grows there really, right? So what would they have to do? They would have to make trips for caravans to go north and south. So رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ, they would send a caravan in the winter down south to Yemen, because it's more tropical there. وَرِحْلَةَ الصَّيْفِ, they would send the caravans up to the Levant, to Sham, to Syria and Palestine, that area, because it's more cooler there in the summer. And that's where they would get their stuff and they would come back. So she was a businesswoman, so she had all these caravans that would go, but she needed someone she could trust. So she hears about him, she says, okay, let me send him. But there's more to it, too. She wanted to check him out. So some of her employees, some of her servants that she sends with this, he tells them, gives him a special task. And look into him a little bit more. Check him out. Report back to me what he's about, what he's truly about. Because when you travel, you really see somebody. When you deal with someone with money, then you really see what they're about, their true colors. And sure enough, where did they come back and report him? They said he was noble, honest, trustworthy, kind. So then after she gets that report, that's when she sends the proposal to get married. And then they eventually get married. Which is another thing to keep in mind, especially, I don't think we have sisters here, so this is for us men here, a lesson directly here. In Islam, it would be, if we look to our culture, it would be the women's side that would send proposals. Even though nowadays that seems kind of like taboo. What? The women's? No, that's not what it was. Why? Because it was up to the man to check up on who this guy is that's coming after my daughter. That's how they check it. This is from our privilege as men over our daughters or our sisters. Before they get married, we're like, no, we're not letting him go to just nobody. Check him out. And that's how Islam, that's how we did it. That's how the prophets did it. Even when you look into the prophets and how they get married and the different incidents that are mentioned in the Quran, that's how it worked. It wasn't from the man's side. It was from the women's side. They would go and check this guy out and see if he's suitable or not. Right? So this is from the chivalry of a man. One time Umar radiallahu anhu, this is after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and it's in his khilafah. He's in the masjid. Somebody comes into the masjid. And there was some reason why they needed to check him out. So Umar asks everybody, who can vouch for him? Who can endorse him? Right? This is back in the day. Now people get paid for endorsements and send you fake endorsements. We don't know if it really meant something. So somebody raised their hand like, I can vouch for him. So Umar asks him, okay, where do you know him from? And he says, I know him from the masjid. He's like, that's the only place you've seen him? The only place I've seen him. So what does the Umar say? You don't know him. You don't know him. You haven't seen him in the masjid. Of course, everybody that comes to the masjid is good. You don't see someone who's in the masjid. I mean, think about it. Can you do a haram in the masjid? Can you commit zina? Can you drink? Can you pop in the masjid? Can you do anything? You can't. You're in the masjid. You're protected. It's like, I don't know, like, brother, no, you play what? Okay, so Noah and I were about to play in a basketball tournament. It's a 3-on-3 one, right? And we need a third. So he's like, you know someone? I was like, yeah, I know somebody. So Noah's like, okay, tell me about him. Does he got game? Is he good? I'm like, Yeah, he's good. I can watch him. He's like, all right, you played with him in some games, you played with him in some tournaments. Yeah, I know him practice. What do you mean practice? I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, he's really good at doing the drills, the layups, drills, and, free throws, and, when you run the plays without the ball and all this. He's really good at that stuff. No, you're like, no, you don't know him. That's practice, right? AI, like, practice? What are you talking about? Practice? Right? That's what we're talking about. That's what I'm saying. If you know the message, we're talking about the message. You know somebody. So then Ahmad continues. He's like, have you traveled with him before? Have you traveled with the guy? And the person, the Muslim says, no, I haven't traveled with him. Like, you travel with them and you're going to vouch for him? You know somebody until you travel with them. What's the word for travel in Arabic? Safa. Safa, but linguistically, why do they call travel safa? Linguistically, it means to expose. Right? So like right now, if I were to take this hat off, I would astamtu ala nafsi. I became like I'm bareheaded, I'm exposing my head. Safa. Okay? Why do they call travel exposing? Number one, when you, especially at that time, nowadays it's a little bit different, but especially at that time when you left your house for a travel, for a journey for a couple months, you're exposing your house. Your belongings, your women folk, like anybody can come in, you're not going to be there. Right now we got smart apps and things like this, smart home, but we still ask somebody, hey, every now and then kind of swing down on place, make sure everything's okay. Number two, when you travel, you're also exposing yourself when you're in the travel to all the elements. You also might be in more danger. And then number three, you're exposing who you really are, your true colors. Right? When you travel with someone, then it's really easy for someone to put up a front in life. When you travel with someone, then you see what they're about. How often are they going to, they get to the airport? Are they the type that are going to want to show up 10 hours early because they're freaking out, or they're going to show up last second? Or when they're there, are they the ones that cut in lines? Are they the ones that bribe people to get their extra? When they get in the plane, are they the ones that don't care about other people? Let me just try to get mine and forget about everybody else. I'm going to turn on my AC. I don't care if it's cold for you. I'm going to, spread my knees out. How they talk to the air hostess or the flight attendants. And then in transit, whether they're going to make their salah or not. On the plane, it's time for salah. Are they going to make their salah or not? You really see what somebody's about, right? When they're traveling. So the guy says no. Like, man, you don't know. Secondly, have you ever transacted with them? And this is an important lesson for us, even nowadays, right? When you want to really know somebody, check these things out. So the guy says, no, I haven't traveled with them. I mean, I haven't transacted with them. Why? Because he only knew for the masjid. Is it permissible to transact in the masjid? No, right? So we're not allowed to do business transactions in the masjid. So of course he never transacted with him. You don't know. And number three, you are close to him? You see him in his own element? No, I don't. You don't know. Because when you're someone's neighbor, then you see their comings and goings. What they're bringing in, what they're taking out. Who they're allowing in, who they're allowing out. Potential illegal activity. You find out about them. So, that's a kind of side tangent, I hope it may. But anyway, so she talks about, let's get back to Khadija radiallahu anha. So he knew through travel and finances and all this, right? And so then she continues on. And she says these powerful statements. Innaka. Remember, this is the reason, this is her explanation of how I can make such a bold statement. Innaka la tasilu ar-rahim, wa tasdiqu al-hadith, wa tahmilu al-kalim, wa taksibu al-ma'dud, wa taqru al-dayf, wa tu'inu ala nawa'ib al-haq. By Allah, you join the ties of kinship. Be careful about family relations. You protect them. You speak the truth. You bear people's burdens. You carry them. You help the destitute and the poor and the underprivileged. You entertain and you honorably entertain your guests. And you help against the vicissitudes which affect the common people. This is her explanation. You do this, and she knew him well. She's seen this, she's been married to him, she's seen this for decades now. She said, because you do this, by Allah, I swear by Allah, no way will he ever forsake you. Will he ever humiliate you? So now let's go on a little bit more, right? So the first thing, indeed, you always connect with family. You're always mending ties. You're keeping ties with family, right? And this is so important. Right? Sometimes you find people that are hot shots on the outside and look like this, but their houses, their homes are messed up. They got really messed up family relations, right? But so here, this is what she's saying about the Prophet. And this is why one time he asks, The Prophet of Allah asked the Sahaba, what type of sadaqah, what type of charity is best? And then he tells them, the one that's to your family. Why? Because then you get double. You get the reward for charity, and you get reward for taking care of your relatives. Right? So, and there's another hadith that, and so, okay, hold on. So he says the word, and it's a very interesting word. إِنَّكَ لَتَصِلُ الرَّحِمِ. Sila, to connect. You connect with family. You connect, literally means connection, right? And some people say salah comes from the same word, sila, because you're connecting with Allah. Just a side point. So, and there's a hadith about this connecting. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Al-wasilu laysa wasilu bil mukafi, walakin al-wasil alladhi idha qatiyat rahimuhu wasalaha." That the true person that connects with family and relations isn't the one that just reciprocates. Isn't just the one that, when people are good to me, I do good to them. But those family members that are bad to me, I don't need that. Prophet of God is saying that's not what Allah wants from you. Rather, the true person who connects with family is the one that when family ties are cut, they connect them. So yeah, I'm good with those that are good to me, but I'm also good with those that are bad to me. Those that cut off with me, no, I'm still trying to connect with them. Why? Even though they're doing that to me, even though. Why? Because we need to, this is an important lesson here about family relations. And this not just family relations, even every type of relationship we have in our life, even with our wives and our children and our parents, this is very important. We need to start looking at relationships bilaterally, like a two-way street. We often get too concerned about that. If they're doing good to me, I'm going to do good to me. If they're fulfilling my rights, I'll fulfill theirs. If they're respectful to me, I'll be respectful to them. Right? But here the Prophet of God is saying, no. Look at it unilaterally. Regardless of what they're doing, irrespective of whether they're fulfilling their rights, you still got to fulfill their rights. Why? Because you're not fulfilling their rights because of them. You're a Muslim. You're fulfilling their rights. Why? Because of Allah. So even when they're not doing that, you still got to do it. Why? Because Allah's still doing what He's supposed to do. Allah's still giving you life. Allah's still good. Did anything change up here? Something changed with me and this person. Did anything change up here? Did anything change with Allah? Is Allah no longer watching? Is Allah not knowing? Is Allah not still the magnificent? Is Allah not worthy of my devotion and worship and obedience? Did that change? That changed. Yeah, something changed here, but that's irrespective. I still got to do what I got to do. Not because of these people. You don't fulfill their rights because of them. You fulfill their rights because it's a mandate from Allah. This is important. So he's saying here, you connect these ties. But that's the hadith, and you're truthful when you speak. You're honest. إِنَّكَ لَتَصِلُ الرَّحِمِ وَتَصْدُقُ الْحَدِيثِ, and third, وَتَحْمِلُ الْكَلِمِ. You carry the burden. Literally, this is like you carry. This is the word that she's using. Like you carry the burden of who? The people that are struggling. Like you literally carry them. Orphans, the weak, the underprivileged, the hungry, the poor. You carry their burden. In other words, what? You help them out. And this isn't just physically, although obviously it means that financially and with food and whatever other ways that you can assist physically. But it's so much more than that as well. Psychologically, emotionally. So if somebody is struggling emotionally, you're also there for them. They need a hand, I'm there. They need a shoulder crying, I'm there. They need an ear for them to speak to, I'm there. They need someone to simply hold their hand, I'm there. An interesting note about this aspect of emotion, when you look into right now the world, and there's studies about this, the two most serious emotional distresses in the world today are what? Anxiety and depression. Depression is about the past. Anxiety is about the future. Depression is being sad and grieving about the past. Anxiety is fear and worry about the future. So let's pause that, put that to the side. We're about to come back to it. When Allah talks about Jannah in the Quran, the most often repeated surah ayah that we will probably hear, the words that we hear often, Jannatun tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, right? paradise which have rivers flowing underneath them. We hear that often. The second most oft repeated description of Jannah in the Quran is what? لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. For the people in paradise, there will be no fear and no grief. Remember the two things? Grief and fear. In Jannah, there's none of that. No anxiety, there's no depression. These emotional things that are man-made because we left the way of life that we're supposed to live, there's none of that in Jannah. In Jannah, it's just pure bliss and happiness. So, let's continue. So, he literally carries this. So, إِنَّكَ لَتَصِلُ الرَّحِمِ وَتَصْدُقُ الْحَدِيثِ وَتَحْمِلُ الْكَلِمِ وَتَكْسِبُ الْمَعْدُومِ. Like you give to those that have nothing. And this doesn't mean that you wait until people are begging for it. You don't wait for that. You go out looking to hook someone up. And through that, you're actually hooking yourself up. How is that? Well, we know that when a person is born, their risk is already written. Their sustenance is already written. The provisions are already written. You're going to get theirs. So even this person that we're, quote unquote, donating to charitably, and we think we're all hotshots and we're amazing people by doing this, technically speaking, they're not going to get that. God's going to get them already. You can do nothing. They shouldn't think you should say them. Why? Because they're doing you a favor because you got an opportunity to get in line on something that was already going to come to them. Regardless of if I'm doing this or not, it was still going to come to them because Allah's already written that down. So if I didn't do it, Allah would have found another way. So I'm not someone special in this line. Rather, I'm being blessed with this opportunity to get in this line of something that's already going to happen. So you should be thankful to who? You should be thankful to them. Why? Because we're, through this opportunity, getting a chance to please our Lord. And that's the mindset we should have with the food pantry, with donations, and any other time that we're assisting someone. It's the other way around. Don't get it flipped. Allah is being beneficial to us and gracious to us, and we should be thankful to these people. So the Prophet Khadija radiallahu anha, she continues, إِنَّكَ لَتَصِلُ الرَّحِمِ. You connect ties of kinship. وَتَصْدُقُ الْحَدِيثِ. And you're honest when you speak. وَتَحْمِلُ الْكَلِمِ. You carry heavy burdens. وَتَكْسِبُ الْمَعْدُومِ. And you give to those that have nothing. وَتَقْرِئ. And you are extremely hospitable and generous with your guests. And this is, again, another mandate from Allah. The Prophet said, من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. Whether believe in Allah and the last day, they better honor their guests. They better serve their guests. In Islam, and there's a whole other topic we can get into, guests actually have rights on the host. You know that. Just like our wives have rights over us, our children have rights over us, Allah has rights over us, our messenger has rights over us, our guests have rights over us. That's how it said. That's what the Prophet ﷺ taught us, right? You know, just something interesting. You know, it's just growing up, and even I'll be honest, even till this day. See, I'm born and raised here, so I'm very like, you know, I don't have much of the culture of my parents, which is from the East, for better and for worse, mostly for the worse. And one of the things that my parents were really raised on, and they try to continue doing it, and sometimes it's hard for me, is honoring guests. Like when a guest comes over, no matter who it is, my mom goes all out. And I'll be honest, sometimes it really frustrates me. Mom, you don't have to do so much. Like, chill, like it's okay. And she'll just go do this, I'm like, and as an American, I often respond to her and say, Mom, it's not like that. Like, me and this person, we're boys, it's cool. It's like an open door policy. I don't need to tell him anything. If you want something, you just tell me. It's okay, it's all good. It's like, that's how I respond. She's like, no, that's not how you talk to your guests. You still better host them, you better be generous to them, right? So sometimes we have some things in our culture. Yeah, it's a part of our culture, but let's try to adopt prophetic culture, right? And we shouldn't use culture as an excuse for doing that. This is I'm number one. I'm number one, right? When it comes to this. But we should try to adopt a prophetic culture when it comes to these things. So, so she continues. إِنَّكَ لَتَصِلُ الرَّحِمِ. You connect ties of kinship. وَتَصْدُقُ الْحَدِيثِ. And you're honest when you speak. وَتَحْمِلُ الْكَلِمِ. and you carry heavy burdens. وَتَكْسِبُ الْمَعْدُومِ And you give, and you earn for those that have nothing. وَتَقْرِ الضَّيْفِ And you honor guests. وَتُعِينُ عَلَى نَوَائِبِ الْحَقِّ You help people regardless of their circumstances. You help people, whether it's easy to help them or not. And whether they're going through a time of hardship, it's easy. You still are always helping people. You're always in the service of people. She mentions like almost like a universal law here. And we have a hadith, it's not the most rigorously authentic hadith, but the meaning is sound, which is Al-Khalqu Iyalullah. فَأَحَبُّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ إِلَيْهِمْ or أَنْفَعَ إِلَيْهِمْ That the creation are the dependents of Allah. Like, you know, when you file out your tax forms, how many dependents you got to claim? Like that. The creation are all the dependents of Allah. And the most beloved of all the creation are those that are most beneficial, that are the most kind to the rest of the dependents. And that's what if you look here at all these things that she's mentioning, you'll find that common denominator in all this. And this is something the Prophet ﷺ was known for before his prophethood. Keep in mind, this is something that he had since he was a child. Again, talking about some of the things that we were mentioning, that so when he came with the prophethood, people already knew that about him. So this was a part of his history. Okay, so. What's interesting, if we again pause and we forward on to a little bit later in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, when things got tough, some of the Sahaba in Mecca, when they were like really being persecuted and stuff, a lot of them left Mecca. One of them was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the best friend, the closest companion, the top student of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He also left at one point. He's like, I can't take this no more. I can't be on my Islam the way I want to. I'm out of here. He was leaving the city. He was on the outskirts and he ran into someone who recognized him because Abu Bakr was someone that people knew. And he was a pagan, this person that saw him. And this pagan says, Abu Bakr, why are you leaving? Someone like you shouldn't be leaving your people. And he said, I'm leaving because I can't practice my Islam. So I'm going somewhere where I can. And then the person says, well, the person actually, in this hadith, right? It's a hadith where this is recorded, this person actually repeats most of these categories here that we just talked about. The Khadija mentions, he says this about Abu Bakr. All of these things that we just covered, because he's the number one student. So the student adopts the teacher. So he was doing all this himself, Abu Bakr. So this pagan says, you Abu Bakr, you do this, all these things that we just mentioned. People like you, the likes of you should not be leaving your people because that will hurt your people. Go back and I will grant you protection. So then Abu Bakr goes back into Mecca and he was granted protection by this pagan. Very, very interesting. I wanted to read one part from the book, which was, okay, I can't get to it now. But he mentioned something, the author mentioned something very nicely in Arabic, and I'll try to remember what he was saying, but he was saying these type of qualities, they don't just come out of nowhere. They come from a sound, beautiful heart that's compassionate and truly is concerned about the creation. And this is why this was in the prophets. Because after all, their message had to come with the sincerity of true concern for the creation. After all, if you're giving someone dawah to come into Islam, you can't give dawah to someone that you hate. If you don't care about someone, how are you going to give dawah? You're going to give dawah to someone that, look, I really care about you, I'm concerned about you, I really want your salvation. So this is why I'm calling you to the way to that salvation is through accepting Allah. So you have this sincerity that was in all the prophets. And then he talks about how this thing, it was just automatic in their heart to the point where they couldn't control it. So he talks about Musa alayhi salam. When Musa alayhi salam left his people in Egypt when he was running away from the Pharaoh on his own, and he goes to Midian, to the place of Shu'aib alayhi salam, and then he sees at the well, the watering well, and he sees a strange sight. He's like, all these people are here, they have animals and cattle, and they're all drinking from the well, and then this is really strange. You have two women here on the side, and we have a bunch of sheep. Like, what's going on here? And he's just waiting, he's watching, he's observing, and nothing's changing. These two women are just waiting to try to get their spot, but they can't get their spot. And they're women that care about their modesty, so they're not going to go and mix with men and all this. So they're just waiting. And they're trying to put the sheep in. By the way, why they call kids. What is a kid? A baby goat, right? And you run around, you send it, you take a cow into a toy store, you run around. So anyway, he doesn't think about it. Musa doesn't think and stop, what should I do this? He just goes in. And she just takes all the sheep from them and goes to the water, gives them water, and then takes them back. He just don't think about it. Like when it's time, when you see something oppressing, when you see something wrong, fix it. Don't think about it. Just wait towards fixing it. That's it. End of story. This is something all the prophets were with. And this is what made them the Safwat. Hence the reason why they would cry in the middle of the night when they would ask for guidance for the people. Apart from what all these haters and these kuffar are going to say about the prophets and messengers, that they were warmongers and they were bloodthirsty, and now they say these evil lies. That's not what these people are about. They were the type that were reaching throughout the night for guidance, for salvation, for what was best for humanity. That's what these people were all about. So don't listen to these narratives and get on the defensive. That's not who the prophets and messengers were. And this is why in Islam and throughout, and when you say Islam as a whole encompassing term with all the prophets, when they came with the message of Islam from Allah, who were the first to believe? The underprivileged, the weak, the slaves. These are the ones that were the first to believe. That's why in Nuh alayhi salam, and we gave a beautiful khutbah about Nuh alayhi salam a few months ago. I thought it was very nice. May Allah bless you. So in that story of Nuh alayhi salam, when he's calling the people, come into Islam, accept Allah, believe in Allah and obey me, what are one of the things they said? But you have all the weak and the poor and the destitute, those are the type of people who believe in it, who are with you. We don't want to come with that. You let them go and maybe we'll think about it. But the Prophet, what did he say? He said, he has the slaves praying next to the masters and the black next to the white, and what's going on here? I'm not down with that. The weak next to the strong, the poor next to the rich. We're British. We're the best of all people. We can't allow that. And so that was one of the demands they made. When they realized that, we can't stop this message is going very good. Like, it's going to get out of control. Let's try to nip it in the bud. Let's just make an offer right now and just. So what was the offer? One of the things they said was, this whole thing, we're not down with that. It has to go back to the way things were. You can't have it. We're willing to come in, but we're not going to pray next to these people. You're making us pray in the same line? No. You got to make that power and balance again. So what did the Prophet do? Oh yeah, everybody will become Muslim, let's accept? No. We don't compromise on these principles. Something so important in 2022. Islam is the haqq. We don't compromise on that. What's wrong is wrong, we don't mix that. And this is very, very important when it comes to, especially when it comes to these type of things. And the biggest injustice. So Islam came, one of the objectives in Islam was to remove injustice. And one of the biggest injustices, perhaps the biggest injustice that a person can do, is they can wrong their own soul. They can oppress their own soul and throw themselves in the most worst of oppression, which is the hellfire. Which is not oppression, but they're oppressing themselves. That's the worst that anything can happen. Worse than anything that can happen in this world is the hellfire, is the Jahannam. And that's why the prophets, and including us, if we claim to follow these prophets and believe in these prophets, we've got to accept the same concern for humanity, of calling them to salvation. Because that's the worst oppression that can happen when someone oppresses their own soul and walks into Jahannam. So I got homework for you guys today. I got homework. Not just reflection, but some actual homework. Homework from now until next week is take every single one of these things that Khadija radiallahu anha has said about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and do it. At least once in this week. Every single one of these things. إِنَّكَ لَتَصْبِرُ الرَّحِيمِ and all this, do it. And if you didn't memorize it or keep track of the words, then you got to go back to the recording because Imam is being recorded, right? It's being recorded. So go back to the recording on YouTube or Facebook, wherever it may be, and go catch the hadith And every single one of those things, implement it into your life from now until next week. And live a prophetic week. Next week, the topic for next week will be, oh my beloved uncle. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst the Safwa, the best of all creation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase our love and emulation of the most beloved of all people to Him, which were the prophets and messengers. Before we end the dua, are there any questions or reflections that we have from today? We still got a couple minutes.
I think one of the beautiful things, mashallah, beautiful presentation. One of the beautiful things about what Khadija radiallahu anha, what she said, everything she said about him, why Allah wouldn't forsake him, or things that he did for other people. You know, she didn't say, you know, you stand all night in prayer, you thicken all day. She didn't say anything that had to do with worship. It was all about him helping other people.
Amazing.
These are all things that we can do, you know.
And that's beautiful. So if the brother, if not already heard the brother, he was saying, he's talking about the common denominator of every single one of these things that she mentions about the Prophet was in relation to how he would interact and serve other people. Right? This is subhanAllah, right? And it's something that we should all inculcate. Very good. Very nice observation. Any other observations or reflections? Or questions? I like reflections and observations like that. All right, so let's end the dua. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbak wa hubba man yuhibbuk wa amal alladhi yuballighuna ila hubbik. Oh Allah, we ask for your love in our hearts, and we ask of the love in our hearts for those that you love, and for the actions that take us towards your love. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Oh Allah, bless and honor our Prophet Muhammad, and elevate his mention and rank, and protection from any harm and evil, and shower upon him grace and peace. Allahumma tahhir qulubana min al-nifaq, wa a'malana min al-riya, wa alsinatana min al-kadhib, wa a'yunana min al-khiyana, fa innaka ta'lamu kha'inata al-a'yuni wa ma tukhfi as-sudur. Oh Allah, purify our hearts from hypocrisy and nifaq, and our actions from showing off and ostentation and in worship, and protect our tongues from lying and deceit, and protect our eyes from looking at things that we shouldn't be looking at. For indeed, you know everything that our hearts conceal and what our eyes conceal. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. How perfect you are, O Allah. You are so perfect, you are beyond any speck of imperfection. All glory is for you, and we praise you. And we bear witness and open testimony that none has the right to be worshipped at all, that none is worthy of worship at all except for you. We seek your forgiveness and we turn to you in repentance. Allah